Hi guys, and welcome to this first look of the brand new Specialized Tarmac SL7. Now, anyone that spends a little bit of time on the internet knows that this bike was already leaked a little bit, so we had an idea of what it looked like, but now we get a chance to really take you through all the details of the frame. I've had it for only a couple of days ahead of recording this video, so I haven't put huge miles on it, but I can give you a little first impression on what I thought of the ride quality as well. So the elephant in the room is that this new tarmac is what we're calling in the Cycling Weekly office the Varmac. For the uninitiated, the tarmac has long been Specialized all-round GC bikes. It is the bike that is meant to shine across a vast range of stages. However, in 2012, the Specialized launched the Venge. Over the years, the two bikes have gradually taken on each other's characteristics. The tarmac has gradually got more and more aerodynamic, and the Venge has very gradually got lighter and its handling has improved. So finally, for 2021, Specialized have merged the two. This is an amalgamated tarmac Venge hybrid. So that may leave you asking what then happens with the Venge. Now, the Specialized will continue to offer the Venge as a frame set only version, but they won't be selling it as a complete bike. In addition, and quite tellingly, they will also continue to offer the Specialized SL6, that's last year's version, in the sport and comp models. So those that are looking to spend a little bit less will have that SL6 ride quality should they want it. And there is a difference in the ride quality in this bike. So the key justification for creating this bike was what Specialized was seeing happening at the pro ranks. Riders were sometimes unsure which bike to choose for different stages. Apparently the technical director at Deceuninck Quickstep has said that this bike really does take away that decision-making process, because what you have is the aerodynamic advantage of the Venge with the lightweight chassis and handling characteristics and climbing characteristics of the tarmac. One of the other objectives from Specialized was to amalgamate some of the handling characteristics. So according to them, the pro riders were saying that the rear end of the tarmac did not match the stiffness of the front end, and they wanted that stiffness that you get in the Venge. So the bike has been made stiffer. They also wanted the lightweight, quick, snappy handling that everybody loves on the tarmac and has loved pretty much from its inception. So the Aero paintbrush has travelled across this frame, but it hasn't accessed all areas. According to the brand, it used its freefall library, fed the tube shapes into the software, and then it also backed that up with CFD testing. Interestingly, they say that they only made changes at the areas that they think really impact Aero. That was the seat tube, the seat stays, the head tube, and the fork blades. So the very first thing that I noticed was the way that the seat stays meet the seat tube. This looks exactly like the model that you have on the Venge. In addition, at the head tube, on the old SL6 tarmac, you definitely had a round head tube. Again, I did really want to get the three bikes next to each other. I wasn't able to do that for this video, but as you can see, here you have a much more bulbous shape. So it flares out at the top, flares out at the bottom, and comes in at the center. You've also got the Aero Fly 2 handlebars. Of course, handlebars are right at the front of the bike. If you can make those slice through the wind, it certainly makes an awful lot of sense. And also they're really nice to put your hands on the top when you're climbing, so I quite enjoy those. The fork blades look a lot more like what you get on the Venge as well. So those are the areas that have really changed. Interestingly, the down tube is still a round profile. A lot of brands are really beefing those up. So using completely different profiles that are much, much wider and either camtail profile shapes or squoval profile shapes. This is round, and it's certainly interesting that they've chosen to take that approach. And it means that the tarmac does retain its tarmac-esque aesthetic. So just on some of the Aero updates, certainly making something really integrated can affect just day-to-day living with a bike. One of the things certainly worth noticing is that you get 35mm of stack at the head tube, and this bike still has 35mm of stack. That is because it's a test bike. I have to send it back to Specialized and I can't chop the steerer, and you can't drop this front end without chopping the steerer. These aren't split spacers. So that is one thing that is worth noting. Now this is actually a new stem, so it's the new Specialized Tarmac integrated stem. It is not identical to the one you had on the Venge, although it does look very similar. One thing that is quite interesting is the top cap that covers the stem bolt on the previous Venge was actually known for flipping off quite easily. This one, when I tried to take it off, it was actually quite hard to get off. It did come off eventually, but it was an effort. So I don't think you'd be flipping it off with your knee as you were with the Venge. Specialized has also added in a Di2 junction box. You do get that on the Venge, so that is just on the rear. It means it's a separate port for charging and for battery indicators. It's pretty handy. So obviously the changes that have been made will have an effect on the ride quality, though the down tube and the top tube pretty much look like a tarmac as we know and love it, if I'm honest. The seat stay bridge, the change in the head tube and those bars, and also adding in the fact that this bike comes with the Roval Rapids CLX wheels that are 60mm at the back and 50mm at the front. All of those things do add up to a stiffer creation. Specialized said that they did want this bike to mirror the stiffness and compliance balance of the Venge more than the outgoing tarmac. Having ridden it, that was my first impression. I was actually really quite surprised because I've been a long-term tarmac lover, but we'll come to that at the very end. So the UCI limit for road race bikes is still at 6.8 kg, and there's no real signs of it budging anytime soon. Now, brands have been able to make very good bikes that light for quite some time. Whilst the top-end models with the 12R carbon weigh in about 800 grams for a frame, the Pro and Experts have the 10R carbon, and that comes in at 920 grams. So there is a bit of a weight increase there, and obviously you're going to have a different group set, so that will be a weight increase too. But this one, at the very top end with Shimano Dura Ace Di2, size 52, came in at 6.60 kg. Another thing that hasn't changed at all is the geometry. Once again, I'm really quite happy with this. I've always really liked the geometry on the tarmac. I did feel quite high riding this bike, but if it were my own bike, I would just chop the steerer. That's really not an issue. You've got 35mm of stack to play with. The sizes range, as always, from 49 up to a 58. So Specialized is pushing on with its beyond gender approach. So this is a unisex frame, as is the Roubaix. You don't have the Amira and the tarmac anymore. You simply change the contact points as you see fit. One thing just worth noting there is that the bikes generally come shipped with certain width handlebars. So if you wanted to change them, that's fine. But the Aerofly 2 handlebars do come in at £250. Really, it's dealer dependent. It's also location dependent. So different countries have different policies. This bike is disc only. You won't be getting a rim brake version. Sorry if that was what you wanted, but you're going to need to be on rotor stoppers if you want to move forward with the new tarmac. There is room for tyres up to 32mm. That's pretty chunky. Things are ever increasing. It's possible in a few years' time we'll all be on 32mm. I would really favour somewhere between a 25 and a 28. It was the first time I got on this bike before I had heard any kind of media presentations, before I'd really got into an awful lot of detail about what's happened to this frame. I took it out for a ride, and the first message I sent to the brand manager over there was, "Hey guys, did you make the frame stiffer?" And they absolutely have. I was really in two minds as to whether or not I enjoyed that extra stiffness. It didn't feel what I expected. I expected to get on the frame and for this bike to feel like a tarmac but with an aero front end. That was very much my expectation, but it definitely had a different ride quality. So on the first ride, on these Roval Rapids CLX wheels, it goes like a rocket, but it is stiff. I did my second ride on the Roval Alpinist wheels. These are a 33mm deep wheel. It's much more of a climbing wheel, and that would probably really be my preference. The bike is definitely stiffer, but using that Alpinist wheel, it felt much more similar to what I associate with the tarmac. I mean, that is always going to be the case. Wheel choice is always going to make a difference. The likes of the Peter Sagans of the world are going to stick with that Sprinter's wheel, and they're going to stick with those super stiff Aerofly carbon integrated handlebars, whereas the climbers of the world might want something more like the Alpinist with a shallower rim and maybe a rounder handlebar. That's always going to be the case. Of course, as a consumer, if you're going for that top end model, it's going to cost you money to make swaps. It's worth bearing in mind, but you know, it's not new science that swapping those touch points and the wheels is going to make a difference to the ride. So obviously I've only had 2 rides on this bike, and I'm not yet ready to say it's the best thing since sliced bread or since peanut butter and honey on toast. But I would say that although my first impression was a little unsure if that stiffness was a good thing, it's growing on me, and certainly right now my first impressions are good, and I'm a big fan of this frame still, but I will bring a full review with detail in the coming weeks and months. So the very top end S-Works model, which is what I've got here, comes with either Dura-Ace Di2 with the Dura-Ace dual-sided power meter, or SRAM Red ETAP with the power meter. Also comes with the S-Works carbon stem, the Aerofly 2, the Tarmac integrated stem, and also the Roval Rapide CLX wheels with the Specialized turbo cotton tyres, which I absolutely love, as we already know. Drop down a level and you've got the SL7 Pro. From this point onwards you get the Fat 10R carbon, which is very slightly heavier. And actually Specialized has made some really interesting choices here. So there are 2 versions. You can either have SRAM Force AXS 1x, or you can have Ultegra Di2. There are brands out there doing 1x race bikes, but it's the first time really we've seen it from Specialized or from a really big player. So it's really interesting to see how that goes. Now both options still come with the Tarmac integrated stem, the Aerofly 2 handlebars, and the Roval Rapide wheels. So you're getting a really good wheel set on there. You do have slightly lower end group set and a slightly heavier frame by 120 grams. So drop down a level and you get the Specialized SL7 Expert. Now it still comes with Ultegra Di2 shifting. You still get the Tarmac integrated stem, but you don't get the Aerofly 2 handlebars. So instead you will be running the Specialized alloy shallow drop handlebars. So the Expert is also the first model that doesn't come with the Roval Rapide wheels as well. So finally, and really quite interesting, you then get the Specialized Tarmac Comp and Sport. Now these don't say SL6 in the headline, but they are the SL6 frame. These both come with Shimano Ultegra, but the Comp uses the Tarmac integrated stem, whilst the Sport does not. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy the video, please do hit like, it does mean a lot to us. And also, if you've got any questions, anything you want to know about this bike, then do just pop them in the comments. We really love to hear from you, and it means I can cover those off in the future full-term review. And of course, if you enjoy this channel, please hit subscribe and you'll see more of our content in the future.